Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Indian farmers are currently faced with a problem of plenty. A bumper crop has led to procurement prices plunging, pushing them deeper into the depths of despair. The crisis has been compounded by inept state governments. Ironically, the bumper production, which ought to have been a boon, is proving to be a bane. The Agricultural Ministry estimates that 273 million tons of vegetables will be produced this year, but it is unlikely that either the farmers or the consumers will benefit. Only middlemen stand to gain, since the Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee laws bar farmers from selling their produce directly in local markets. They can sell only through commission agents. The Reserve Bank of India has already sounded an ominous warning, stating that the crisis could spread further, with the market price of pulses hovering well below the minimum support price. With a bumper crop expected this year, on this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze if it is good or bad news. Joining me on the program today are Gargi Parsai, senior journalist; Nitin Desai, former Chief Economic Advisor, Government of India; Tajamul Haq, former Chairman, Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices; and Yashveer Singh, President, Kisan Kamgar Sabha. I'd like to start with the farmer leader on the program today. Yashveer Singh, what do you think as far as the bumper crop is concerned? Is it going to benefit the farmers or not?
No, it benefited the farmer. It benefits the nation. It benefits the trader. GDP goes up, share market goes up. But simultaneously, farmer has to either sell its whole produce at throwaway price. There is nobody taker in the market. All agencies which are responsible for procuring the crops, FCI or other agency, state agency, they cannot procure to the amount of farmer is required. The question arises, then farmer has to be throw his crop either on the road or in the mandi. I have seen the situation last night on the TV. In Ladwa mandi, farmer came, deposited their crop. There was a heavy rain. It completely washed away. In the morning, when farmer came, they were weeping. This is the situation in this country. The farmer has to sell its entire crop at through price, and either he has to go under distress condition, he has to sell in such a unreasonable condition that he become debt rated, or he cannot take his entire responsibility of the family, education of his kids, and the marriage of his daughter. So entire his social program goes behind.
So you're saying that a bumper crop is not great news for the farmer?
It is not reflecting, okay. Yeah, okay. Not at all.
Fair enough. Gargi Parsai,
it benefited the farmer and middleman. It benefits only to the government and farmer. Government feel happy, our GDP is gone up, and the common man feel we are getting the food or other thing at reasonable price, because it is plenty available in the market.
Sure. Gargi Parsai, I'd like to bring you into the picture. Of course, you know, the farmer leader is saying that bumper crop is not good for the farmers at all, and we're going to see a lot of crop destruction with the farmers coming out and throwing the produce onto the roads. Do you see a lot of that happening, and do you think that the farmer is going to benefit maybe in the long run if they take some kind of short-term measures, and what should these short-term measures really be?
Bumper crop always doesn't bring good money to the farmers, as has been said, and one of the reasons for the agitation that's going on in the country is that there was bumper crop in Madhya Pradesh, onions and all, and farmers were not getting their price. They were just getting like 1 rupee as against what they should have got 8 rupees or 10 rupees for the onion. So that is bad news for farmers. And I would also say even consumers normally don't get it at a price that they should get. They also get, whether it's a bumper or not, they get at a higher price. So where does the price escalation take place? Somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle, where there are middlemen, there are traders. If there is a shortage, people hoard. If there is not, then prices crash.
Sure.
Solution is there should be decentralized storages. There should be cold chains. There should be food processing at the village gate level. We have been talking about this for the last 10 years. You know that the food wastages from the vegetables and fruits that you're talking about is to the tune of, it's like very high, 40-50,000 crores is an estimate that those are the few food wastages in our country. We are number one in so many productions, but we don't even export that much. Our export is only 2 to 3%. So even when there is a bumper crop, farmer remains wherever he is, because all these measures that need to be taken at the decentralized level have not been done over the years.
Sure. You know, these long-term measures have been spoken about for several years now, Mr. Desai. Let's not get into, you know, the long-term measures as of now. But can we come up with some kind of short-term measures to ensure that, you know, some kind of relief is given to these farmers?
I would say the key problem that we have is a structural problem. Let us be realistic. And the structural problems at the supply end, I'm not going to go into. The real problem is that our whole agricultural produce marketing system has not kept pace with the way in which agriculture has changed. Our farmers are now investing in new technologies, in fertilizers, in equipment, in new varieties. They're spending money. They are entrepreneurial. But we have not had a produce marketing system which has kept pace with the changes which are taking place in the production system. Let me give one or two numbers, if you'll permit me.
Please.
Basically, we think that we have a very public system for buying stuff in the market. It is not there. Basically, public procurement is for just two things, rice and wheat, and that too in a few states. 93% of wheat procurement takes place in 3 states, Punjab, Haryana and Madhya Pradesh. 93% of rice procurement takes place in 10 states, a little more than that. 60% of our cropped area is on products other than rice and wheat. There's virtually no procurement there. We can announce MSPs. You know, Mr. Huck's CSCP announces MSPs. But what's the use of an MSP if you don't procure? You think pulses are being procured? You announce MSPs, but who's buying it? Where is a public agency buying these pulses and marketing them? And then you have the perishables. We forget the importance. 30% of the value of agricultural output is horticultural, which is fruits, vegetables, and perishables. And if you see this year, if you see the numbers this year, if you take the 3 key perishables, potatoes, onions, and tomatoes,
Yes.
prices now are half of what they were a year ago. One of the reasons for this could be that a lot of the cash trade, which used to take place at that level, withdrew because of demonetization. So that was not there this year. It is exceptional. We had almost continuous decline in prices since September, October, over a long period of time. And you have exceptionally low prices of these perishables now. I want to contrast it with milk, where we have a system which does not constrain the farmer as much as the others. You have a cooperative system with the linked cold chains and processing. You have a certain freedom to the farmer to sell to a third party. Remember, there are many private parties also in this area. You have much freedom of movement of milk across state boundaries and everything.
You have a lot of processing as well.
And you have a lot of processing now. And if you see that perishable, it does not have the same volatility as the other perishables.
Sure.
The answer lies in something we can do, which is to build a much more modern system of agricultural produce marketing than what we have now, which gives the farmer freedom to choose how he or she sells and to whom he or she sells.
Sure.
You know, that is the short-term, it's a solution which can be done now.
Sure.
But it means the government must be ready to take on the trader community. That is the key. You have to be ready to take on this trader community. There may be some problems which will arise in the middle, but you have to do this. You have to modernize your agricultural produce. Doing things, you know, gimmicks like e-marketing for produce. Where is it going to work? How many farmers are going to be able to do e-marketing? Just do a simple thing. Allow the farmer freedom.
Sure.
To sell where he wants, to whom he wants, at the price he wants.
Mr. Huck, you know, as part of the government, what kind of initiatives are being taken? Is something that Dr. Desai is suggesting, are things like that being looked at? Is something like that being done?
I think he's quite right in the sense that agriculture marketing system is not only imperfect, it's inadequate to respond to the needs of the farmers as things are happening. And secondly, we have been talking about agriculture marketing reforms for the last several years. At least I remember from 2001, I think a lot of things happened, at least in terms of exercise being carried out by the various departments, including Planning Commission then, and Niti Aayog now is currently engaged in that kind of activity. But certainly not much has happened. Say for instance, you mentioned about fruits and vegetables being not sold, and these farmers are throwing it away in the roadside and all that. The point is, in the case of fruits and vegetables, currently there is a deficit in the storage itself of the order of say 50 to 60 million tons. So what do you do? So you produce so much and then you can't store it locally or anywhere in the nearby place, and then there is no cool transportation system also to take it to far off places, and in general as a whole in the country itself, as I said, there is so much of deficit in the storage facility. So then what happens? The prices have to crash, and this year if you say potato production was higher only by 1%. And you see the price, the way it has crashed. So I think this has to be addressed on priority basis immediately. We have been talking about it, but we have not done much on this. Secondly, for the last several years, we are also saying that fruits and vegetables should be taken out of the purview of the APMC system, and that has not happened. And most of the states are not willing to do it for various reasons. In some cases due to some revenue loss, in some cases due to some kind of collusion between the Aratiyas and commission agents and the state politicians. So all kinds of things are happening, but this is the need of the hour. Unless you address this issue seriously, this kind of chaotic condition in the market will continue, farmers will suffer. Even in the case of rice or wheat, for instance, whenever, and there also we find about 15 million to 20 million tons of deficit in the storage itself, that is lacking. And if you say that this government is currently, at least I should say, thinking seriously in terms of some kind of agriculture marketing reforms. We have been discussing with all the state governments one by one, going there, discussing.
But just discussing is not enough. We need to implement it as well.
No, first of all, they have to be convinced. It is the state government which has to adopt it. And if they don't do it, we cannot impose on them. So after all, but then the process is one that is going on currently. Secondly, just last week you must have seen, in order to enable the farmers to store their whatever they produce, at least for 6 months, there is a state, some kind of interest subvention of 2% announced only last week. So this kind of tidbits are being done, whatever the central government is doing. But at the state level, even a state like Punjab has not agreed to go for APMC reforms in a big way they wanted. Karnataka was considered to be very progressive ones, but even they have not taken out fruits and vegetables outside the purview of APMCs.
Sure.
So all these problems are coming in the way, but certainly post-harvest infrastructure has to be adequately created. A proper policy framework has to be in place so that this kind of things do not happen, and also there is proper coordination between the central efforts and the state government's efforts.
Indeed.
And third thing, also the export-import policy. Yeah. Most of the time, I think we take a very ad hoc kind of measure, like suddenly we say, when in fact, whenever there is, you have seen in several cases, whenever there is plenty of things produced here, you say export ban. And when there is a scarcity, you are not able to import. So I think this kind of ad hocism, and for some regions, and that does not make any sense most of the time. I have seen in the case of sugar, I have seen in the case of onion also, I have seen the way they fix minimum export price for onion, and then when there is no need for that, and then you are producing enough, you can export it, but there is no export outlet because of that kind of restrictions. So trade restrictions, lack of marketing reforms, lack of basic post-harvest infrastructure, I think is coming in the way.
Sure.
I think all these things need to be addressed.
Kashmir Singh, that is a point that Gargi Parsai was making as well about, cold storage, post-harvest infrastructure. Is that going to help the farmers?
Yes, definitely it is going to help. But I want to add something more. We have to have crop policy. This country is short of policies. This country is short of edible oil. Government has not given that emphasis or could not make a crop policy. So we could say, we could shift the area of the rice and the wheat to these crops. So even this is very
Tajamul
critical.
Haq wants to just say something. After that, you can make your point. Yes. Yes, Dr.
Just on this, because this year, if you have seen, there was so much of emphasis on pulses production.
No, emphasis has been
No,
Let him complete his point and then you can.
Production has improved significantly from 17 to 19 million
I
tons to
know.
this year 22 million tons. But what is the result? If the government government also increased the minimum support price,
Yeah.
but the market prices have crashed. Nobody is there to procure adequately, and then it cannot be addressed. The market should be there. The question is, whatever is produced, for that there should be a market. Market must take care of this.
No,
If that is not there, and it is not always possible for the government also to procure all commodities and then again,
I'm not
where do they
saying
dispose of?
procurement
So
of
there
the
are
entire
problems.
thing will do, because already more than 70% is consumed by farmer itself, because farmer is a 70% population. Only the question of 30%. So we have to have a crop policy like in Kerala. Kerala banned certain, rather say, growing of the rice in certain area. They said they can only rice in this percentage of their cultivation. Rest has to go to other crop. So as far as the pulses and oil seeds are come, we are importing every year. We are subsidizing the other countries' farmer. But to this level, if we think that we have to went on importing the edible oil, we went importing the pulses, this is really a ridiculous situation that we are not giving that incentive to our farmer. Incentive has to be there so that farmer can shift from rice or wheat to these crops. This is very important. No doubt, procurement has to be there. One way you are enhancing the production. Second way, you are importing the pulses. Then what will be the situation? This year we have imported.
Okay.
This year the import is
Farmer increased its
lower
production.
anyway.
One at a time, please. One at a time. Mr. Haq doesn't agree with what you're saying.
no,
but
we cannot agree.
let's take the discussion
let's
forward as to what needs to be done really for the farmer. Gargi Parsai, a lot has been said, a lot has been discussed about long-term as well as short-term plans for farmers. But do you believe, as far as MSP is concerned, vegetables, horticultural products are left out of the ambit of MSP? If they are included and if there is a minimum support price, it will really help the farmer?
I don't know if MSP will help, but I think market intervention should help. It has done in the past in the case of potatoes and onions, not in tomatoes. So, a very cohesive kind of a view has to be taken. I mean, when people start saying that let farmers diversify from rice and wheat to perishable crops or something else, then, see, this government has been saying that agriculture is a state subject, leaving a lot to the states without railing a firm policy in place has really created a kind of a chaos. So that is why, there should be a proper policy in the sense that when you say that this should be diversified, let there be certain areas where you have dedicated. I have always thought that there should be areas where you have dedicated growth of staples, for instance, and then you go for diversification. Even if you go for diversification, or even when the bumper crop of wheat also and rice is expected this year, then as everybody has been saying, there are no markets. Why no attention is being paid to markets? And my thing about this is also that everything is linked to WTO. So when you have a policy, when you give a commitment at the international forum that 10% you won't exceed the cost of your MSP beyond 10% or 15% of the total agriculture produced, that is a very restricting factor on the government. That affects the procurement also. That is why you might have seen that last to last year not enough wheat was procured, 23 million tons was procured against a target of 28 million tons, and then the government had to allow zero duty import of wheat. And there was a hue and cry because farmers were saying, when there is enough wheat in the country, why are you allowing private trade to import from outside? So the policies are very skewed, the import-export policy, there is no stability there. There is no stability, and everything looks to be very, very ad hoc. And that really needs to be paid attention to. You can't change agriculture and farming as per the whims of a political that comes to power.
Sure.
If it is a Congress-led government, then there is a certain policy. There was a lot of focus on, say, contract farming, lease farming and all those kinds of things. And when this BJP government has come to power, then there is a focus on organic farming. We still don't know what is their view on genetically modified crops. You know, there is a ding dong there. So there is a lot of ad hocism in agriculture, and you're really sending very ad hoc signals to the farmers, to the state governments as well. And the other important point is that there is no investment in the sector. There is no, when you want cold storages and all, storages as well as cold storages, government invited the private sector, gave lot of incentives to the private sector to come and invest in the sector. But they don't want to come. Everybody wants mega food parks and food processing units and all. But even these big companies, agri-businesses and all, they want incentives from government. They want tax holidays. They don't want to put their money, and they want tax holidays. They have been given also for 10 years. So just look at the imbalance in the sector.
Sure. You know, Mr. Desai, do you believe that somewhere governments are not too serious about our agriculture at the end of the day? Because, you know,
I think the problem is the governments are too serious about agriculture. Not that I wish they were less serious and they not keep on doing.
Because of agriculture's contribution to the GDP, do you believe?
The real problem is that this, at the political level, the government always, there's a ding-dong between the consumer interest and the producer interest. She mentioned the whole issue of trade. International trade policy is set by the center. The states can't do it. And there is always this ding-dong. Go up, you know, if you allow exports, what will happen to the consumer? They're worried about the, you know, backlash from the consumer end, and so on, and so forth. So I'd say that what I have seen in government is, when I told you about perishables, now whenever we talked about potato, onion prices, almost always it was from the perspective of the consumer. That is, the government would suddenly wake up if the prices flared up. You know, if the prices suddenly shot up, there will be meetings of the committee of secretaries, what should we do? They'll come up with all sorts of things. NAFED will buy stuff and come with trucks to sell it, or they'll try and import, and so on and so forth. But the same urgency is not shown when the price crashes. You see, that asymmetry as something I had seen in government, that there's a greater sensitivity to a sudden flare, because these are very volatile prices.
Yes.
What I would say is that try and recognize that there has to be a solution on produce marketing, which is capable of handling the inevitable ups and downs which will take place in a thing like agriculture, where there will be ups and downs in production. You cannot avoid it. It is not in our hands, it's in the hands of somebody bigger than us who's up there, you know. So we have to live with that reality. So I'd say that my answer is not that the governments don't worry, they worry about it too often and not always for the right reasons. I think, for instance, what they're doing now is not a solution. There's never been a solution.
The farm loan waiver is not at all a solution.
What is it? It's a substitute for insurance. And what would normally be taken care of by crop insurance, they're trying to take care of the loan waivers. So I would say that the very fact that you're ending up with a crisis after a good monsoon year and with the prospect of another good monsoon year should be a wake-up call.
Sure.
The problem of Indian agriculture is not scarcity. It is the managing of the good years, which is increasingly the problem. Scarcity you can manage.
Indeed.
Enough foreign exchange reserves, import the stuff when you need it. But what we have not learned is how to manage the good years.
One final comment on the program from Mr. Haq. You know, the milk model that Mr. Desai was talking about, cannot that be implemented with some of the other perishables like fruits and vegetables? You know, 18% of fruits and vegetables get wasted on a yearly basis in India. That's a sad thing.
In fact, more than that, the official figure is 42% of fruits and vegetables get wasted. And even in the case of grains, it is about 18%. So I think this is a huge loss, post-harvest loss. So that's why I said that.
So can't the milk model be replicated into?
To a great extent, this will help, and also it is being tried. Safal is an example, and then cases, this is being done. So, but this has to be done much more in a bigger way, and also the agri-producers groups, like farm producers groups that we are trying to promote, but it is again going slow. I think this is one of the things. Its linkage with the processors, both locally and internationally. If you have that kind of infrastructure, production pattern, and then also linkage with the national and international markets, I think things will help. And you have rightly said that cooperative milk kind of system, like even in the case of Bihar earlier, I remember people used to say that nothing can happen in Bihar. But Sudha cooperatives, in the case of milk production, they have shown that they can do a wonder. Like there is a milk revolution in Bihar.
You need a Trigondas, Patel and a Korean for all other, other crops also.
Exactly.
That is the thing.
Unfortunately, there were only 2 of them. So I don't know where we're going to procure more. But on that note, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. I'd like to thank all my guests, Nitin Desai, Tajamul Haq, Gargi Parsai and Yashvir Singh for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. See you again next time.